YouTube vinyl community, Beach Boys fans, random people on the internet, hey, my name's Giggens. We're here today to do a Beach Boys review. It's been a minute, hasn't it? Best of the Beach Boys Volume 1. Bet you weren't expecting that. Well, maybe you were because you clicked on the... Never mind, I don't want to ruin the surprise for you. Anyways, this album is a fascinating curio in the Beach Boys discography and their story. So in 1966, so much was happening for the Beach Boys, specifically Brian Wilson, who was, putting out Pet Sounds. kind of a big deal, right? Pet Sounds was an album that was unexpected to the record-buying public, unexpected to the critics. It was something that blew everybody away. Like, they knew Brian was cooking up something good, and they knew they had an idea of what he could come up with because of Beach Boys Today being so different, but they weren't expecting what actually came out. So when the album did come out, it peaked at number 10, which for the Beach Boys at that point was not good. Anybody in the world would be like giving everything they could for a number 10 album. Can you imagine that? Number 10 would be amazing. But Capitol saw that as like, ooh, that's not good. And it didn't go gold like instantly, which all their other albums had since like the last 3 years before that. So for Capitol, the people who put the money into this project and were hoping to get some return of investment here, they saw a bunch of red flags and they were like, okay, this is not selling. The music is way different. We just want more surf songs, which is why we asked Brian to make the Beach Boys Summer Days album. And the Party album did pretty well because that was also some fun stuff. Plus, it had I Get Around on it. People love that one. We want more of that. Brian was so disappointed that the album... here's the thing. When Pet Sounds came out, the critics loved it. It had a whole new fan base because all of a sudden all the hip people were like, oh, the Beach Boys are making cool music now? Okay. Because you gotta remember, artsy-fartsy hip people weren't really into the Beach Boys at that time. And if they were probably doing it ironically. So when Pet Sounds came out, all of a sudden they were like, oh, okay, I can do this. I can do this. There's a great quote from, I forget who said this quote, but basically someone said the Beach Boys were a bunch of surfing Doris Days. And I love that quote, but actually I think it's great. But the thing is, Pet Sounds wasn't performing the way their other albums had. It took a little while to get to the top 10. I think it debuted at number 49 and took a few weeks to, work its way up, as most albums do. A lot of albums do, I should say, not all of them. And so while this album was being lauded by critics, and Bruce even went to England to, walk around and show this album off. He got a hotel room in London, and, John and Paul came from the Beatles, and Keith Moon came. They all wanted to hear this amazing album. Everybody was blown away by it. But the people who were buying Beach Boys records at that point, they wanted more California Girls. They wanted Fun, Fun, Fun. They wanted this, they wanted that. Hearing songs like I Just Wasn't Made for These Times or Caroline No, they were really confused when they first heard it. So contextually, looking back on it now, so much music has been made since then. So when we hear Pet Sounds now, it's like, wow, it's a really great album. But when it came out, nothing sounded like that. Nothing sounded like that. They were completely on their own. It was truly groundbreaking music. But at that time, too, you gotta remember, very little was being thought of when it comes to pop music or rock music. It wasn't taken seriously. It's not... Believe me, Giggens probably would have had a YouTube channel in 1966, but it would have been extremely rare. People weren't sitting around talking so deeply about music, unless it was jazz. But, pop music wasn't taken seriously. And so for Brian to put out this intensely detailed project, it was a lot for a lot of people to handle. And Capitol knew that, and Capitol was scared. So, in classic money-making fashion, let's roll out the oldies, because that's what sells. And so they put out Best of the Beach Boys Volume 1 less than 2 months after Pet Sounds came out. Let me also contextualize this. While this gets released, Brian is writing Good Vibrations. Good Vibrations. One of the biggest songs they ever had in their entire career. He's making Good Vibrations. And this has Louie Louie on it. You see where I'm going here? So Brian was kind of hurt by this, but he also got really inspired by the critics who really cheered him on, and the music community that was like, hey, Brian, you did something really special here. Keep it going. That fueled him to keep going, and he did. And this thing comes out, It peaks at number 8 on the charts, so 2 steps higher than Pet Sounds, which hit number 10. This goes gold in a year, less than a year. By April of 67, it goes gold. By 1991, it goes double platinum. This thing sold really well. It took a long time for Pet Sounds. I think Pet Sounds has gone platinum by this point. I gotta double check that. I know it's gone gold. This thing gets a pretty decent push promotionally from Capitol. Pet Sounds didn't. It had some promotional stuff, yes, of course. They did their due diligence to put the bare minimum in to promote that album. They really didn't push it as hard because they didn't understand it. You know, it's one of those things where if you don't understand something, how are you going to talk about it? You know? This album was just an instant idea of like, oh, we should make more money. We haven't done this yet. There's car songs. There's surfing songs. Songs about girls. People love those. This'll make more money. And it did. And it stayed in print for a very long time. There's also rumors that when record stores would order copies of Pet Sounds, they'd get this instead from Capitol. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? It's just nuts. Also in July, like a few days after this comes out, Wouldn't It Be Nice / God Only Knows comes out as a single, which is a humongous success. Hits number 8 in the charts, does really, really well for itself. So it's funny how the album Pet Sounds, it was performing well, but not as well as their other albums had, yet here's a new single from the album that does really, really well and is one of their most remembered classics. Who knows, man? During the time that this thing is on the shelf, Brian kind of stops working on Good Vibrations for a little bit. Between June to August, he kind of takes a break from it and then picks it up a lot more again in earnest in August while Smile starts. So while this thing is on the shelf for the next couple of months, Brian Wilson starts writing Smile. Again, this has Louie Louie on it. It's like, it always reminds me of the Beatles on their last few concerts. Like going out and playing like Candlestick Park, and they're playing like, you know, rock and roll music and Twist and Shout, but meanwhile they just wrote Revolver. Like, bands were changing. The album was becoming a thing. People would buy an album and listen to the whole thing for what it was as a piece of art. It wasn't just a singles game anymore, and the record company had a hard time keeping up with that. Capitol also must have been super scared at what Brian was doing next with Good Vibrations because it was taking so long to write this damn song and record it and put all the pieces together. So the fact that this thing came out while that was being recorded, all these old songs about the old days, you know, and then Good Vibrations comes out in October, a few months after this thing comes out, and becomes one of the best-selling songs of all time for them. A massive, massive hit. A game-changing moment in music history that everybody's ears perked up. All of a sudden, it was hip to like the Beach Boys. All of a sudden, Brian Wilson is a Genius comes out as a thing. Derek Taylor's their publicist. He worked for the Beatles. Brian will soon be on that Leonard Bernstein special playing Surf's Up on the piano by himself. All of a sudden, the Beach Boys are ahead of the curve. And all of a sudden, the world's taking notice. So here's Capitol Records being like, did we miss something here? Because all of a sudden, the Beach Boys are super, super hip. And literally everybody's talking about them and putting Brian up on this pedestal as the next big thing, even though he had been a big thing. Everyone was so excited to what was going to happen next as Brian worked on Smile. This album comes out in a year where both Pet Sounds is released and Brian starts Smile. It blows my mind. What's equally as fascinating is that the British version of this thing, which came out a few weeks later, is massively different. It shares about maybe 5 songs from this one. I don't have a copy of the British one, but the British one is a pretty decent summation of their career to that point. So it starts with Surfin' Safari and works its way up to Pet Sounds. It's really a good mix, but it's got 2 songs on it. It's got Soup John B and God Only Knows from Pet Sounds, where this thing is nowhere near it. The most recent album on this is Beach Boys Today with Kiss Me Baby. You know, it skips Summer Days, Summer Nights, Beach Boys Party, and Pet Sounds. So it skips 3 albums. It literally just stops in 1965. It's like they purposely chose songs that were simple, easy to digest, instant earworms, It takes zero thought to think about them, purely because they didn't understand Pet Sounds, and they were hoping the rest of the world felt the same way. So they could put out this thing, knowing they'd make money off of it, knowing it would be in print for a long time, and feeling very, very safe about it. It's really sad. I understand that when you're a big company and you've got those deep pockets, that you want your money to go into something that's going to come back your way. You're going to want to make more money because you put something into it. But that's the thing. Money is never about art, and art is never about money. They will never meet. They will never want to be friends on MySpace. It's something that will just never, ever happen. And it's sad because you have people within the Beach Boys. Brian was the artistic guy. He was writing the deep songs. He was the piano player. He was the guy who didn't want to tour so he can write. Mike was the guy who would go out there and promote the band, be the face of the band, sing all the songs, keep the image alive. You need those two factions to work together. Inside a band, it's possible. Inside a band in a record company, very rarely does it work unless you're on an independent label with people who actually care about music and aren't just there for a paycheck. So I've got 2 copies of this thing on vinyl. I've got it on cassette as well. This is a pretty early copy of it. This is a Columbia House version of it. And this one is a slightly later copy. It's an RCA Record Club edition, which does have the gold stamp for showing that the record went gold. This one does not have it. But it's funny because, yeah, this one is much earlier because it's got the strip up top. So this is probably mid-60s, 66, 67. And this one's probably about 1970, I would say. But what's fascinating about this album, too, is that even though it says stereo on top, the record labels actually say duophonic, but I'm pretty sure some of these songs are actually true stereo because some of these songs sound incredible. Catch a Wave sounds gorgeous. Surfin' USA sounds really good. Little Deuce Scoop is super clean. In My Room is great. So here's the thing. I feel like I've just talked about the Beach Boys in 1966 this whole time, but as far as this album goes, is it good? Yeah, it's freaking great. It's the Beach Boys, man. It's a bunch of great songs. How could you go wrong with it? The fact that they call it Best of the Beach Boys Volume 1, they knew they were going to do more. And they knew they were going to sell really well. And they knew it was going to be something that people can just go to the store and pick up the one Beach Boys album for their collection. This would be the one. It's an instant no-brainer sell. Greatest hits albums work that way. I don't feel like buying 14 Queen albums. Queen's greatest hits. Done. Like, you get what you want, you're happy. This satisfies that. Pet Sounds at the time, for most people, would have been like, what the hell am I listening to? So this thing comes out, hee, everyone's happy. So the songs on it are great. The track selection, the sequencing, it's a little weird, but Louie, what the hell were they thinking with that? I know that they eventually put out a bunch of other good songs on their other albums from the Greatest Hits set, but like, they had a song called I Get Around. That's a good one. Or, I don't know, Don't Worry Baby. I mean, just a thought. I don't know, California Girl. You know what? I'm not going to ruin the surprise for you. It's just crazy. I don't know who the hell was in charge of sequencing albums at Capitol in those days. But it's like, who thought Louie was good? Anyways, let me show you what the record looks like before I have a total fit. This is the RCA one, and it sounds really, really good. But yeah, let me show you the actual label itself. So the label itself is that late 60s capital C. So I'm guessing this is probably from like 1969 to 1971, somewhere in there. Kind of a tannish brown label, but if you look really closely, it does say duophonic. But some of these songs are definitely not duophonic. They sound like real stereo to me. And I mean, that's a little bit of a claim because I got a bit of hearing damage, so I could be completely wrong about that. It could just be the way I hear things. But yeah, it's a greatest hits album, and it's something that, for a long time, this probably was the only Beach Boys album some people had. And until Endless Summer came out, this was a big deal. If you wanted the Best of the Beach Boys album, this is what you got. This was in print well into the 1980s. I want to say it went out of print around 1991 or 2. I might be wrong about that, but I remember reading about that somewhere at one point. It's a fascinating document in the story of the Beach Boys because the Beach Boys story has always been about, can we prove ourselves? And then something coming up saying, nope, you can't. We want this. We want this instead. This, for me, is one of those first moves. Because Brian was stretching himself out, trying so many new things. The guys were on board. They were like, hey, he's been right so far. Let's just stick with him. He knows what he's doing. And they put out Pet Sounds, one of the most gorgeous albums of all time. And then he started making Smile that same year. This guy was like 23 years old, you know? It's just mind-blowing that, like, as he's making this extremely expressive music, this thing is on the shelf promoting the Beach Boys. And Capitol, for the next plethora of years, will always do the bare minimum to promote this band. Throughout the rest of the 60s, up until about 1969, they were still labeled as America's #1 surf band. Was Capitol just not listening? Or did they just not care? Maybe both. Maybe both. So anyway, this was really fun to talk about this thing. I'll do Best of the Beach Boys Volume 2 at some point. I did Volume 3 a million years ago. Actually, I may have only done the UK one. Or maybe I did do the US one. I don't remember. I've done like 300 videos at this point, man. I have no idea what I'm doing anymore. Anyways, this thing is fantastic. 9 out of 10 because Bloody Louie is on here. And just no one does that song well. The Kingsman original version is great. But like covering it, everyone just sounds sloppy. Everyone just sounds drunk. They all sound, they just don't care. Like they're just trying to be cool. Let's make up the words to Louie again. Like, we get it. The Paul Revere and the Raiders version, blah. This version, not so good. It's just, come on, man. California Girls. That would have been a humongous... Anyways. 9 out of 10 from your boy Giggens here. That's it. Tell me what you guys think about this thing. What do you think of it in terms of their discography and their story? You know, did it help them? Did it hurt them? What do you think? I'm very curious to hear about that. But until next time, same bat channel. My name is Giggens. This has been the Beach Boys, Best of the Beach Boys, Volume 1, released in 1966. A very pivotal year for these guys. So much happened. It's just nuts. I might do a whole video just more and more about 1966 at some point because it was a year that really changed a lot for them. But that's another video for another day. My name is Giggens. This has been the Beach Boys. Thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me that you guys are here. And put some Beach Boys on today. How about that? Thanks for watching. Go drink some water. And take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time. Bye.